Hello, everybody. Charles from GMAT Ninja here. Welcome to episode 3 of our 2026 Reading Comp series, live as always every Friday. So, hey, we're going to make mistakes if you're watching it live. I thrive off your feedback. I thrive off your wisecracks. So whenever I ask you to tell me what you're thinking, please throw it in there. Love to see what you guys are thinking. Helps everybody, especially the people watching later. Today, we're going to talk about inferences, implications, suggestions, lots of ways that GMAT likes to phrase those reading comp questions. I actually have a bunch of goals for this video. So superficially, this series is all about question types, not necessarily passage types. That said, I'm going to give you a one paragraph blob today. I wanted to make sure I worked one of those in early in the series because we always talk about, oh, hey, you want to get to the purpose of the paragraph. Why did the author write this? Connect it to the purpose of the other paragraphs. Well, what if it's only one paragraph? So we're going to address one of those today and kind of how to think about maybe breaking it up a little bit or what to look for when you think structurally. Second, thinking structurally is what it's all about, right? So even though we're focused superficially, and not superficially in some ways, even though we're focused on question types in this series, what makes you really efficient or really good at inferences, suggestions, implications, even detailed questions? If you understand the big picture, if you understand the argument structure, if you understand how and why the author wrote what they wrote every step of the way, and you are going to be so much faster, so much more efficient finding the details you need that are going to help you answer these suggest, imply kind of questions. So that's what we're going to focus on today. Everything we're going to do, as always, will be based on efficiency, not just accuracy, help you be more effective at reading these passages. And then all the questions I give you will, for the most part, be suggests, implies, infers. And thank you for, my little cut of my pinky, little accident with small children. Very, very beautiful kid Band-Aid I have here today. Thank you for that, Lewis. So the one other thing I want to say about these before we jump into a passage, a lot of the time I see people overthinking inference questions. They'll go, oh, the question's asking me which of the following can be inferred. You go, well, no, that one's too obvious. So you'll discard the answer choice that seems obvious because you're like, no, I didn't infer that. They stated it. Don't think of it that way. If the answer is obvious, it is almost certainly correct as long as you read it correctly. So what the GMAT loves to do is that word inference can mean a lot of things. It can mean a very simple restatement of something. It can mean that you really have to work hard to draw a conclusion. It can be anywhere in between. The way I want you to think about these questions, whether it says implies, suggests, infers, any of those things, I want you to think, okay, I want to find the 4 that are not true. I want to find the one that is the most true. That's it. Don't overthink the idea that it does not have to be stated directly. If it feels like it's stated directly, hey guys, that's probably your right answer. They can just rearrange the words a little bit, and now it's an inference instead of a statement. Okay, so keep that in mind as you're doing these questions. First passage, not so bad today. Second passage, I think, is pretty tough. All right. First one here, we'll talk about something called carotenoids and mating and man animals. It'll be very exciting. All right, go ahead and take a moment or two. Again, one paragraph wonder here. Go ahead and spend a moment breaking this down. And again, as always, I want you to think about why. What's the author's argument? Why did they write this? And I will remove that logo in just a second here. Oops, there we go. Enjoy in live group. As soon as you have an idea of what you think is going on here, why the author wrote it, what the purpose is, fire that into the chat, please. All right, as always, if you need a little more time with the passage, feel free to hit that pause button. All right. So these one paragraph blobs, again, it's a little bit harder to think structurally with these, I think, because I don't know. I think students are often more likely to just let it turn into fact, 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 fact in their head as they're doing this. And that's not great because you might miss the big picture. You might miss what kind of argument the author's putting together. So in your head, you can kind of break it up a little bit. And that's not an arbitrary thing. It's just paying attention to kind of the cues, maybe little things in the passage that might suggest it's about to, excuse me, head in a different direction. Okay, as I read that first part, we've got kind of this bunch of facts in the first 3 or 4 lines, right? We've got these things, carotenoids, it's a family of pigments, and they're colorful signals. And so animals get those from their diet, and there's some details about that. And females tend to prefer males with that colorful pigmentation. Okay, so far, do I see any arguments here? Do I see anything like that? Not at all. It's background. I'm not saying be dismissive of it, but I'm not super focused on that. It's that very next sentence when it starts talking about Owens and Olsen, O and O. So they have a hypothesis, right? And here's where we start getting into the meat of some sort of argument, right? Hey, here comes a hypothesis. Great. So kind of in my head, I'm almost putting a little paragraph break there. I don't want you to think of that as something formal. At least for me, it kind of helps me go, okay, I see something changing here. We've gone from background to introducing the hypothesis of Owens and Olsen, O and O. Okay, so O and O, they've got this hypothesis. And what's their hypothesis? It's that coloration, so these carotenoids, they're meaningful if they're either rare or required for health. Okay, required for health. So meaningful if they're rare or if they're required for health. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, rare meaning, and we'll get to that a little bit more later in the passage. So rare meaning that, only the fittest males can go forage for this stuff. There's not very much of it out there. Or required for health. Maybe I'll get into that later as well. Okay, so then it introduces this conventional view. So Owens and Olsen, why is that hard to say? Too many O's. Owens and Olsen have this hypothesis that it's meaningful for reproduction only if it's either rare or meaningful for health. What's the conventional view? And the GMAT loves this stuff, right? It's like, oh, hey, here's an old way of thinking, and now we're going to give you a new way of thinking. And that's a structure you see all the time. What's the conventional view? Just that it's rare, right? That's it. So basically saying that the healthier males are going to be foraging for more of those pigments than inferior males. Okay, so that's a way of signaling. So hey, if this is rare, only the fittest males will have this pigmentation. Only the fittest males will be colorful. Great. All right. Although this may be true, and again, in my head, I'm seeing that although, and I'm going, okay, here comes something that's going to change things a little bit. Now the author maybe is inserting their own opinion. Although this may be true, growing evidence that they're meaningful because they are required, because there is a health argument here. So kind of the next thing you would say here is maybe not conventional view. What's the opposite of that? I guess sort of new view. Maybe required for health. And so how exactly does that work? Well, it's the case that these help immune defense. It helps at detoxification. So then the author kind of goes on to say, well, okay, so what exactly is going on here? Is it always health? Is it always that they're rare? It's saying, well, no, it could be actually that it's both. So males that are healthier are going to be able to use the pigment for coloration, and males that are less healthy will use it for immune defense. And that means that what you're going to get is the males that are healthier will have this flashy display of color because they can afford to. They don't have to use it for health. So it's required for health, but it can be true, can be used for either health or a flashy display. Impress the ladies with your very colorful stuff. I mean, that's why I'm wearing a bright red shirt today and a very beautiful blue Band-Aid. I'm just trying to impress my wife. All right, that's it. There's your big picture. Kind of have this hypothesis by Owens and Olsen. You've got this conventional view. Oh, it must be the case that these are rare. And that's why it's kind of a signal for mating, because only the healthier ones can get this rare stuff. Only the healthier ones, healthier males, have the time and energy to go forage for this stuff or the skill or whatever. New view. Okay, old view, new view. Well, yeah, maybe it does matter for health. It helps immune defense. It helps detoxification. So maybe it's the case that it could be used for either one, and the healthier males end up using it to impress the ladies, and the less healthy ones use it for health. All right, that's it. We've got it. Yeah, and thank you so much, live group, for punching stuff in here. I want to highlight a couple of these. Conventional view about carotenoids doesn't tell the whole story. Yes, as shorthand, not a problem. I would want to caution you. I can't quite tell exactly what you're thinking here, but I would want to caution you. You might want to take that a little bit further. It doesn't tell the whole story. How? Because I think it's going to be hard to find the details, hard to find the things you need for the inference questions, and really all the questions, if you stop there. So if this is all you're getting out of it, probably a little bit of underreading. You want to go a little bit further. And again, I can't tell if that's all you're thinking or if that's just what you happen to toss into the chat. Yeah, and I think this is a little bit fuller. Thank you so much for this, Lewis. So yeah, you got the background, you've got this counter conclusion conventional. I think I know what you're thinking here, and I think that broadly in shorthand kind of matches what I'm thinking. All right, let's hop into a question. Go ahead and give you guys a couple minutes on this one. And again, live group, as soon as you have an answer, toss it into the chat, please. As always, pause if you need to. Okay, warming up pretty gently here. Passage implies which of the following about the insects from which animals acquire carotenoids. So A, they don't produce carotenoids themselves. I guess it doesn't say that directly, but if you look at just kind of the first couple sentences, second sentence, I guess, animals either acquire carotenoids directly from the plants and algae that produce them. So plants and algae are the ones that produce the pigments, the carotenoids, or animals can get those substances indirectly by eating insects. So that implies that the insects are getting them indirectly. They don't actually produce them. They eat the plants and algae that do produce them. So A is looking pretty good. What I sometimes see from students on this or on things like this, and I want, if this is something you ever do, whether it's on this question or any others, I want you to really pay attention to it. If you hear your brain going, well, that's too obvious, or well, that's stupid. That's not really what this is about. Yeah, it's not really the heart of the passage, and it seems kind of obvious. It seems kind of lame, but sure, why not? Now, as always, find 4 wrong answers. What if we messed up somehow? I always want to go through all of them, find 4 wrong answers, cross them out. But I want you to really listen to that voice in your head. One of the most common, I would say the most common error I see on relatively easy questions is when students say, nope, that's too obvious, and discard it for that reason. So if you ever hear the voice in your head doing that, please pay attention to it. You might be walking yourself into a wall. All right, B, they use carotenoids primarily for coloration. No, insects don't do that. There's nothing about that there. It's only talking about animals who use it for coloration for various reasons. C, they maintain constant levels of carotenoids in their tissues. We have no idea, nothing about the tissues of insects in this. D, they're able to use carotenoids to boost their immune system. Animals, yes, maybe. Insects, don't know anything about it. E, they are available in greater abundance than our carotenoid-bearing plants. Again, we have no idea if this is true. So, all right, a lot of you probably didn't like A, but it's our answer. And I just want you to get used to that feeling. And it seems really, really silly. But when I go through data, when I go through what we've seen our students do over the last 25 years, this is the kind of thing that gets them into trouble. Feels too obvious, they discard it. So please don't do that. All right, next question. Actually, let me see. Let me address this. This looks interesting. I have a question for you. When time comes up, question in the comments, and it said, must be true. Is it a subset of implied questions? It's actually a really good question. I'm glad you asked this because in a way, no, and in a way, yes. So I think there's a dimension of these suggests, implies, in inference kind of questions that is about not overthinking what those words mean. So again, if there's one thing you take away from this video today, it's think of anything like that: inference, implication, suggestion. Think of it as just, I'm going to find the most correct answer out of the 5. That's it. 4 wrong answers, the one that is most true based on the passage. That's it. Don't worry about how directly it was stated. So that's a common dimension of mistake on inference questions. On the must be true, could be true, yeah, we don't really see that, right? That's a much more straightforward thing for most people. So that dimension of making mistakes based on a little bit of overthinking doesn't happen on must be true, could be true. Now, where these are very, very similar, I think, more broadly, or how to get efficient at them in particular, it's everything that we've been saying throughout the series and really in all of our videos about, I want you to read the passage. I want you to really think about structure, author's purpose, connecting parts of the passage together, thinking about the big picture. Because if you do that, it is so much easier for you to find the relevant detail. And we're going to see that in a lot of the questions in the rest of this video. So I would argue that process-wise, yeah, the must be true, could be true. Which of the following is most strongly, the passage most strongly supports which of the following, which is a way of basically saying the same thing, which of the following is true. The process for addressing any of those, inference questions, implication questions, it's all broadly the same. Read the passage really, really well. Don't overread it. Don't underread it. Think about the big picture. Understand the relevance of everything you just read in the context of the argument, and you're going to be a lot faster at them. So fundamentally, your process is the same for those. Awesome question, Luis. Thank you for that. Luis. I keep saying Luis for some reason. All right. I'm going to tackle this next question. Give you a minute or two. All right, that's cool. Not seeing any trouble with the live group on this one. We'll hop in. Okay, passage suggests that relatively bright carotenoid-based coloration, say that 10 times fast, is a signal of which characteristics? A, readiness for mating behavior. That sounds kind of dirty. There's nothing about that exactly, right? So the females take the coloration as a sign of fitness in the male in general, not necessarily readiness to actually do the dirty deed of mating. So A is out. And by the way, this is a really, really popular wrong answer. A lot of people pick A here. Ability to fight, nothing about fighting here at all. The way they talk about fitness is more about foraging ability, immune system, detoxification, nothing about fighting. See particular feeding preferences, nothing about preferences here, right? There's nothing about, oh, animals, some animals like to eat this stuff. Nothing about that at all. Nothing about the preferences. D, recovery from a parasite infestation. Not necessarily anything about a recovery from it, right? Yeah, it has a relationship to health, but it's not going to signal that you're recovering from an infection necessarily at all. And I really hope we like E, fitness as a mate. Yep, that's what we've been talking about the whole time. What I find really interesting about this one is the error rates on this one are really high. And I'm seeing the live group just nailing this, and it's great. It makes me happy. And again, a lot of this just follows from, if you've read it, if you thought about the relevance of everything, how it fits together, very, very easy question. If you skimmed a little bit too much or didn't anchor in the big picture, that's when you get into trouble. All right. Last question on this passage. and then we'll move on to a harder passage. So enjoy this not terribly hard one while you got it. All right, pause if you need more time. Live group looks like you guys are doing pretty well on it. So the idea that carotenoid-based coloration is significant, partly because they're required for health, suggests that a lack of coloration in a male is most likely to indicate what? It's all about that very last sentence. So males that are more susceptible to disease and parasites will have to use their carotenoids to boost their health. Males that are genetically resistant will use fewer carotenoids for fighting disease, and they'll advertise it by their nice flash display of color that impresses the ladies. So the ones who lack coloration probably lack this immunity to disease, lack overall health in some way. All right. Inefficient detoxification processes, tempting. But note, so it does mention detoxification in the previous sentence, right? So males can use them for immune defense and detoxification, but there's nothing here about inefficiency of those detoxification processes. That is not at all part of it. Instead, what you see the focus on is on genetic resistance to disease. So A isn't crazy. If you wanted to keep it in to be conservative, I suppose you could. But really, there's nothing about inefficient processes there. I think we can get rid of A safely. And again, if you wanted to be conservative on an actual test, if you're not sure, look, hang on to it. You can always come back to it, especially when it's A. All right, B, immunity to parasite infection. No, the ones who lack the bright coloration aren't the ones that have immunity, right? It would be the other way around. So the ones that lack the coloration are going to have what? They're going to have something that makes them less healthy, such as C, low genetic resistance to disease. That's looking pretty good. D, lack of interest in mating. Oh, that's so sad, but absolutely nothing about that here. There's nothing about the relationship between interest in mating and coloration. And E, lack of carotenoid storing tissues. There's nothing here anywhere that talks about the tissues that store carotenoids. So C's our answer. All right. Hope you guys enjoyed the warm-up passage. This next one is going to be a lot tougher. Okay, some interesting questions pop up from the live group. Yeah, good question. We addressed this quite a bit. Take this guy off the screen. Thank you for the questions, guys. Keep firing away. I'm happy to answer this broad stuff. That's why we do it live. If you guys have stuff you want to address, more than happy to do it. Have a question while reading the passage. After each passage, should you ask whose point of view is it? So this is something we played with a lot in episode 2 of this series, where we just focused on point of view. Really, it's something that I want you attuned to all the time. So not just at the end of the passage or at the end of the paragraph, not just then. I want you to think about it all along. Now, do we have a lot of points of view here in this passage? Not really, right? We've got Owens and Olson up here. We've got a conventional view. Whose conventional view is that? I don't know. Conventional view of scientists who study this in general? Sure, okay. And then we kind of have this new view. Whose view is that? You kind of get the sense it's the authors. We could argue about whether that's really explicit. My point of this is, I wouldn't think of this as just something you do once. I would think of that as something that you're doing constantly. Whenever somebody new is introduced, I want you to say, okay, wait a minute, is this somebody else with a different point of view? As you get to more complicated passages, and again, we did one last week in episode 2 of the series, we had 5 different points of view in that one passage about, was it Renaissance, the status of Renaissance women, right? And we had 5 different points of view. There were 3 different commentators. There was kind of this hand-wavy other set of commentators. And then there was the author, right? 5. So always pay attention to it. It's what helps you understand the broad structure. It's what helps you understand what argument is the author constructing. And even when we're focusing on inference questions, implication questions, detail questions, must be true, could be true. If you're anchored in that big picture, it's really going to help you. Point of view is a really important way for you to get at that big picture. So focus on it all along. I maybe wasn't quite as explicit about it going through the passage as I sometimes am, but it's here, right? So notice I kind of have 3 sort of main things I wrote down. Owens and Olson, conventional view held by, we're not sure who, but scientists in general. And then this new view, again, is it the authors? Is it more generally accepted? Unclear. But here's 3 different viewpoints represented. So always stay focused on that. It's going to make you so much more efficient in the long run. All right. Let's see. Oh, yeah, this thing. So if you're enjoying watching me, you want more, we have a full free video course, Quant, Data Insights, Verbal, been teaching for 25 plus years. So all that kind of goes into our free course on YouTube. Go ahead and hit that QR code if you're interested. And if you don't like me, we've got other people who teach better than I do and are younger and better looking. So if you're interested in more from GMAT Ninja, please take a look at that stuff. All right, enough of that. Second passage, harder passage, economists, wage gaps. So yeah, enjoy this. This one has a few paragraphs. I'm going to give you 1 paragraph at a time. 3 paragraphs will give you 1 at a time. And if you're watching live, let me know what you're drawn from the passage. So let me know what you get out of this paragraph. What's the big picture? Why do you think the author wrote it? Go ahead and take a minute. Right, as always, if you need more time to get your head around the paragraph, go ahead and pause. Okay, so put this back up on the board again, because I think this is great, because it's a really good example of a paragraph. And again, 3 paragraphs in this passage, taking them 1 at a time. Really good example of an opening paragraph that sometimes I see students being really dismissive. Oh, it's just background information. Well, that's not untrue, right? Like, do we get to the heart of the argument yet? No, that's coming. But I think it's really valuable here to think about, okay, whose point of view is represented? And as you'll see when we get to the questions, that's going to make even these sort of detailed questions, these inference questions, suggestion questions, way, way easier if you're thinking about point of view from the very start. Okay, so what do we have here? So statement of fact at the beginning, right? So most women still work in female-dominated jobs, earn lower wages than men typically earn. And then second sentence, hey, we're getting into the points of view almost right away, right? So, hey, supply side economists are like, oh, this doesn't make any sense, because they don't really I'm going to over paraphrase this. This is a degree in economics talking. They don't really believe in discrimination, right? So discrimination must eventually disappear. So what I'm thinking here is we've got these supply side economists, and they're basically puzzled by this. They're puzzled by the pay gap. We'll say puzzled by the gap. They're puzzled by the fact that women work in female-dominated jobs. Well, I'll just shorthand it as segregation here. And why is that? Well, they basically say that discrimination must eventually disappear. So says their economic theories. Okay, so that's point of view number one on this. And then we've got one of them. So he is a supply side economist, this Polacek guy, has recently proposed a supply side explanation that emphasizes the depreciation of human capital while one is on leave at work. Okay, well, so then we've got, I'll abbreviate him as SP. So he's got a theory, he's got an explanation, and it's about wage depreciation. What does that mean? We don't know yet. That's fine. But again, what should we get out of this paragraph? It's the idea that there's 2 points of view. Author is setting up, and again, they're related, right? So this Polacek guy is a supply side economist, but hey, there's this general community of supply side economists going, hey, I'm puzzled by this. I don't understand why this works, or how this works. Why is there discrimination? Why is it that we have this pay gap? Discrimination shouldn't happen according to economic theory. And then you've got a specific guy saying, I've got the answer. It's wage depreciation. What is that? Don't know. But it's going to help you. It's going to help you make sense of what follows if you're already thinking, okay, author is setting up for, here's a general point of view. Here's somebody's specific explanation of it. Okay, off we go. Maybe we'll see the author's opinion soon. Maybe we won't. Let's see. Go ahead and take a moment on paragraph 2. Right, if you need more time, feel free to hit that pause button. Live group, let me know as soon as you have anything. And I realize it's a pretty dense paragraph. There's a lot going on here. So again, what does it mean to be really efficient? What does it mean to be effective? Again, whether we're focused on inference, detail kind of questions, or just in general, it's taking this mess and going, well, okay, I can turn this into fact, and read it like it's an econ textbook, and I've got to memorize a bunch of stuff for my exam. Or I can think more in terms of like, well, wait a minute, why is this really here? What's the main point? And it takes a while for this paragraph to build to the main thing, right? And this is all just really just all saying Polachek's theory. So how does it work? Fairly complicated. What's his main point? It's kind of buried at the end. It builds up to it. It's basically saying, hey, workplace segregation, this fact that women are more likely to be in female-dominated jobs, they get paid less in them. Why is that? It's rational choices. Oh, that's interesting. Get a different color out here. So paragraph 1, here's paragraph 2. And again, point of view, we're still on Polachek here. So it's still this guy, SP. So segregation is, let's say equals rational choices. Huh? Okay, well, how does that work? Well, so women are more likely to plan intermittent work over the course of their career. So as they choose an occupation early, they're saying, well, hey, I'm going to have an intermittent career anyway. And it doesn't say this, but presumably because women end up taking time off for kids, pregnancy is rough, all those things. So, okay, women are more likely to plan intermittent work. So they're going to choose occupations with low depreciation, meaning that when you leave your job for a little while, you come back, your wage didn't go down too much. Okay, so women are choosing this deliberately. They know they're going to have gaps in employment. So they choose occupations that have low depreciation. It's their way of maximizing their lifetime earnings. Okay, interesting. But again, as always, if you struggle, if you start to kind of swim in the language, swim in the details, always just ask yourself, what's the big picture? What's the big picture? Why is this here? Do we see the author's point of view? Not at all. This is all about Polachek. But what is his main point? Here it is, that the workplace segregation is rational choices, rational pecuniary choices, I think is the word that's used there, made by male and female workers. Okay, so rational choices, why is that? Well, women plan intermittent work. And that means that they choose low depreciation jobs. And men are more likely to choose jobs that require consistent investment because they're not going to take the time off from work. So all this is a rational choice. Women know what they want. They know that they're going to have intermittent work. So they say, great, I'm going to choose jobs that have low depreciation. And that's why this works. Yeah, seeing some great things from the live group. Thank you so much, you guys. Yeah, there's tons here. I don't think I can address everything here. This is cool. I appreciate that. Two things. One is I wouldn't when you're practicing, whether it's with a video like this, or you're practicing on your own, you're doing a practice test, you're doing something out of the official guide, resist the urge to look up words you don't know. Wait until you're done with all the questions. Why? When this happens on an exam, what's the real skill? The real skill is the ability to kind of work around it. Can you understand what the word means from the context? The GMAT's goal is to never require any specific vocabulary knowledge. That said, I mean, not really specific to the field. Pecuniary, you could argue, is a general word. Sometimes they do have words like this that aren't really used that commonly. But the skill I want you to really focus on developing when something like this happens to you and you go, whoa, there's a word I don't know. It's, can you work around it? Can you still extract the big picture from this? I'd argue here you probably can, right? Rational pecuniary choices, even if you just kind of ignore that word, I think you still get the essence, right? What's going on here? Well, hey, it's all rational choices by women. Why? Well, because they're planning intermittent work and they're going to choose jobs where that depreciation of wages is lower. Okay, what does pecuniary mean? I don't know. It doesn't really matter. So I want you to get in the habit of working around it. Yeah, it's nice if you have a big vocabulary. It helps. But the funny thing about the GMAT is you can have a pretty limited vocabulary as long as it's not wildly limited. And it's not going to bite you that often because almost always you can work around it. So that's what I want you to focus on. And then after you're done with the passage, go look it up. So thank you for bringing that up because this is a really, really, really common thing. Okay. Anything else here that we want to address right away? Yeah, great. Some of you guys are doing great things. Louis, appreciate it. Okay. I'd be a little careful with this. So two parts from Dino. So this explains why there's a gap, basically. Yes, by implying that pregnancy affects the value of women. Okay, taken a little too far, right? So the passage doesn't mention that. I mean, I think it's fine to kind of go, well, why would women plan intermittent employment? Well, that's why. But does it affect their value? That's not at all what this is saying. It's saying that that if you're a woman and you know that you will have intermittent employment over the course of your life, you are making the rational choice to choose jobs that have lower wage depreciation. So your wages don't go down as much when you take a break. So I'd be really careful because does it affect the fundamental value of a woman? That's not Politics' argument at all, right? It's that no, everybody's rational. They're making the rational choice, and here's why. So be careful. If you're reading, and where I appreciate part of why I picked on this comment, part of why I like it, is in real life. If you're reading this as an opinion piece in a newspaper or a blog or something, this might be exactly what somebody's saying. Here, be a little more literal because the author's not making this argument, neither is Polachek. Polachek's making an argument about rational behavior and why people behave this way. All right, thank you so much for this, everybody. Okay, third and final paragraph. Go ahead and take a minute. And again, I really want you to focus on how does this fit with the previous ones. Think about point of view. That's what's going to make you efficient in the long run. All right, as always, pause if you need another minute. Live group, seeing some great stuff. Makes me happy, you guys. Louis, Dino, appreciate it. In particular, Maria saw some good stuff up there. Okay, so again, tune into point of view. Always, always, always going to make everything more efficient. Lots of it here, right? So we've got these supply siders back here. Supply side economists in general. We hone in on one specific one. Polachek, we've got his theory. All this stuff about rational choices and depreciation of wages, and that explains the segregation. Now we've got the author saying, no. There's no empirical evidence for this. No empirical evidence to support this idea that all of this is rational choices. And really the heart of it is, well, there's just no advantage to choosing these jobs, these female-dominated jobs. So if Polachek is right, then women get something out of this, right? They're going to benefit in some way. So no advantage to female-dominated jobs. And what's the evidence for that? There's really kind of two pieces here. One is that the depreciation rates really aren't different for women. So women could be in male-dominated fields, female-dominated fields. The depreciation rates are identical. So same depreciation rates in, we'll say, male, female jobs. And then this is a little sneaky as you look at towards the end of the, I guess, middle, yeah, towards the end of the paragraph, I guess. You see another point of view kind of sneaking back in, right? As some other economists have proposed. So, hey, here's another point of view. Here's another thing they're kind of sneaking in there. Always pay attention to that stuff. I'm not saying make a big deal out of it. The more tuned in you are to that, the easier life's going to be. So do female-dominated jobs have higher entry-level salaries? Okay. So we've got some economists so female jobs have higher entry-level wages. And the author again says no. That's just not true. So basically, the author is just fully debunking this whole theory. And again, that's the big picture, but you want to be careful to make sure you're representing everybody's point of view and honing in on, well, why? How does the author get there? Author gets there by saying, yeah, there's really no advantage to women choosing these jobs. The depreciation thing isn't really a thing for women between male and female dominated jobs. There's really no difference there. And entry-level wages aren't higher anyway. All right. Great. Thank you so much, everybody. Louis. By the way, Louis, my first instinct was to say Louis, but that's an unusual enough pronunciation. I didn't do it. My favorite uncle's name is Louis, as it turns out. Maria, yeah, awesome, you guys. Seeing a lot of clearer and clearer thinking as the series goes on makes me happy. All right, got about 12 minutes left. Let's jump into some questions, and we'll go see if we can get through 3 of these. Ooh, I'm seeing some disagreement in the live group. Makes me happy. It means we chose a good one. Okay, not technically an infers or implies or suggests question, but I picked on this. You'll see. So according to the passage, the following is true of the majority of female workers. Okay. By the way, process is the same if it's this or if it's which of the following can be inferred. Find the most correct one, eliminate the 4 that are the most wrong based on the passage. Don't overthink the word inference, implication, any of that stuff. Okay, so is it true that they're given raises as frequently as male workers are? We certainly no reason to expect that would be true. We might assume the opposite, but that's not stated anywhere. B, they're more interested in steady employment than male workers are. Depends on what you mean by steady, but the passage does state that, well, we kind of assume that women are more likely to expect intermittent employment. So B is out. C, they're laid off more often than male workers are. Nothing about layoffs here. All about the choice of employment. Do women choose a female-dominated profession? If so, why? D, they're uneasy about the possibility of wage depreciation. Well, that's interesting because you just read a whole passage that is very, very focused on wage depreciation. So the instinct is to say, yeah, hey, let's pick this. This sounds pretty good. I'm going to keep it. E, they're employed in occupations dominated by women. Well, yeah, absolutely. The very first sentence, right? Most women still work in female-dominated jobs and at lower wages, right? Unambiguously true. I mean, this is stated pretty darn directly. What I see people do a lot of the time, talked about this earlier, that's why I picked on this, because it's the same behavior I see a lot, even more amplified in inference questions, even though this is technically just a which one is true question. It's a detail question. Too obvious, and not what the passage was really about. Okay, wasn't the heart of the passage. Is it true? Yeah. Is it obvious? Yeah. Does it feel weird to pick it because it's too obvious? Yeah. But man, that is extremely true. Well, what about D? They're uneasy about the possibility of wage depreciation. There's nothing here about them being uneasy, right? They are aware of wage depreciation and they choose professions. So says Polachek. Author says no. But the idea is that, well, maybe women are picking fields that have less wage depreciation. Does that mean they feel uneasy about it? Not at all. And by the way, Polachek was wrong, is what the author's saying. According to the passage, that whole theory Polachek gave us, nope, no evidence for it. So for a couple reasons, D is out. Nothing about the unease, number one, and number two, the author just kind of says all this is garbage anyway. So really, really tempting. And yeah, the reason why I really like this question is exactly that. What we see a lot of, had a really good conversation with one of our tutors yesterday about this. One of the behaviors that we see a lot of on reading comprehension, detail questions. Yes, it's discarding the thing that's too obvious. That's one thing. The other thing is over focusing on the thing the whole paragraph is about. Yeah, I always want you anchored in the big picture, but just because there was wage depreciation everywhere doesn't make D the right answer. When you actually look at exactly what D is saying, no, that's not supported. That very uninteresting thing in E is supported. So that's our answer. All right, fun times. Let's get to a couple more questions. Hopefully, have fun, guys. All right, live group nailing this. Awesome job, guys. Can be inferred from the passage that Polachek assumes which of the following about individuals who are about to make career decisions. Again, that's all that second paragraph, everything we talked about here. What's Polachek saying? It's all rational choices, right? So women know what's coming. They're planning intermittent work over the course of their career. So they're going to deliberately choose professions with lower wage depreciation. Awesome. A, so they have trained themselves as well as possible for the careers they're about to enter. Nothing here about training, none of that stuff. B, they've spent little time thinking about their long-term employment futures. Quite the opposite, right? He's saying that people see it all coming and make the rational choice in advance. I don't know about you guys. I was not making long-term rational choices at age 18. C, they're aware of the depreciation penalties for the various jobs they're considering. Yeah, I mean, to make that decision in the long run, you choose a profession that has low depreciation. You must be very aware of them. C's looking pretty good. D, they're attracted to jobs that offer the highest entry-level wages. Not something that Polachek is arguing at all. The entry-level wages thing is some other economists, right? And again, good example of why it's so important to focus on that point of view. D is not Polachek, it's some other people out there. E, they will choose occupations on the basis of their interest in the kind of work being offered. Absolutely none of that, right? It's a rational choice about money and long-term maximizing lifetime wages. E is out, C is the winner. Live crew, awesome job on that. It makes me happy. All right, we'll do one more here. Last one, and then we'll wrap up. Awesome, guys. If you need more time, hit that pause button. I want to wrap this up before an hour's up, so go through this one pretty quickly. And I might have already done a little too much to kind of prime you guys on this one, to kind of because I kept pointing out these points of view, right? And this particular one, some economists, I pointed out several times, not because I was trying to help you with this question, but just because that's good reading, is focusing on point of view. And Maria, great question that I'll address in just a moment. So according to the passage, some economists have suggested which of the following is a characteristic of female-dominated jobs. They provide greater job security. Nope. Higher starting salaries. Yep. Exactly what they've said. They require less training. None of that in there. They have higher depreciation penalties. Very much the opposite. And they give leaves of absence more readily. Sounds legitimate, but there's nothing about that in the passage. So B is our answer. Live group nailed it. By the way, more than half of people missed this question. And it's an inference suggestion question, right? But the reason why you might miss it is because of how you're reading the passage, which is why I harp on that all the time. All right, a couple minutes left here. Yeah, some great questions in here. I wish I had a little more time. Dino, yeah, this is a longer a longer story. The short answer to it is all the things we teach in these videos, both the ones we're doing in this series on GMAT Club, over on the GMAT Ninja channel as well, which we're approaching in a little bit of a different way. That's what we're always focused on. Like, how do you get better at reading efficiently, reading for the right things? So I wouldn't worry about the avoiding consecutive wrong answer choices. I would think of it as there is a optimal way to read for efficiency, focused on big picture, focused on point of view. If you do that, it takes practice, it takes time, get consistent with that. You'll spend less time going back and forth between the questions and the passage. That's what builds efficiency. That's the short answer. The long answer is many hours of these videos. We're kind of answering this question very slowly over time. Last thing I want to wrap up with, Maria, awesome question here. And I'll get us back to the first question here. So according to the passage, which the following is true? Really, really good question. Yes, there's different points of view, but notice that the correct answer here is something that is given as fact, not anybody's point of view. So the GMAT is very, very careful. I think sometimes you do verbal and it feels subjective, or it feels a little arbitrary. It's not. There's a very, very bright dividing line between right and wrong here. They're not going to give you something in the right answer that is debatable. That's not what they're doing. Notice the right answer here is, yeah, stated as fact, most women work in female-dominated jobs. So you aren't going to get something on a fact question that is based on a point of view that is debatable in the passage. It'll be something that is either given as fact, or it might be something like according to the author, blah, 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 blah. There's the rest of the question. It will be something the author clearly agreed with. So it'll be stated as fact or something the author clearly agreed with. So for these fact questions, they're not going to punk you by saying that the correct answer here is something that just Polachek said, because the author went on to disagree, debunk everything Polachek said, basically. So you shouldn't have to worry about this, is the bottom line. They will take care of that, so that is unambiguous in the question if you're reading it correctly. So thank you so much for that. All right, that's it. Hitting the hour mark here. Everybody, live group, thank you so much. Not the biggest group today, but I really appreciate the live to you guys and all the participation. Really grateful for it. If you enjoyed this, invite a friend. We're here every Friday live for the next couple months, reading competence and critical reasoning. Then we've got some other things coming up, I think, possibly some special podcast topics. Hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, tell a friend. You got questions, at me on the forum at GMAT Ninja, here on YouTube at GMAT Ninja Tutoring. Thanks so much, everybody. Have fun studying.